Hello, everybody, and welcome to In the Volume with Ace Ruel. Yes, welcome to being with me to talk about character development. Now, I'm just playing. Now, guys, I just want to make a quick disclaimer before I start this video. If you hear noises in the background, like kid noises, kids screaming or kids shouting and everything, it's because I'm at home and my three kids are running wild. I did record this 2 a.m. in the morning, and when I heard it back, I was like, no, oh my god, I sound like I'm dying, so let me re-record. So basically, cut a long story short, what I want to do is I want to actually put more content on my YouTube because I know people are subscribing, people do watch, so I felt like I wanted to give you guys this, which is the breakdown of how I, as an actor, become a creature character. And generally, you can use this for any character, but I'm more focused on creature characters. So what I'm going to do is give you a breakdown of how you can use this information as a animator or a creature artist to create your own character. Like I said, I'm going to be talking as if I'm talking about creature characters, but you can use this for any form of characters. So here is the breakdown of how I develop and become a creature character. So what we're going to go through is 6 phases. 1, creating the backstory. 2, creating the psychology. 3, creating the anatomy and physiology. 4, referencing. 5, applying your creativity. And 6, becoming the creature. So let's get started. So one of the things that I have to do in order to become a character, I need to know the backstory of the character. I need to know where they're from. What was their living conditions like? How were they raised? You know, these kind of information help me to kind of form the purpose and psychology, which then goes on to forming the behavior and actions of that character. So the story of your character, and I'm just going to read what I say in my presentation. A lot of who we are as individuals come from the experiences of our backstory. The environment and the people we were raised around contributed enormously to our locomotion and our psychology, which forms an important aspect of our behavior. Therefore, creating a backstory for your character is essential. Not only does it help to develop their intentions, it can also be key to developing their anatomy and physiology. So, I'm going to say so a lot. It's like a way that I always keep saying so. So basically, knowing the backstory of where your character comes from is very important because it helps you to develop their psychology and their locomotion. You know, a lot of us take the walk, we walk similar to our parents, or we might walk similar to the people around us. We talk similar to the people around us. We behave similar to a lot of the people around us. And because of these little things, in order for you to start with your character, you should know their backstory. So when you're creating a character, think about where were they from? How were they raised? What were their living conditions? Who were they around? Who did they idolize? Who did they hate? All of these things will contribute to their psychology as well as their locomotion. So what I do with every single part is have questions. Every single section I have questions that you can ask yourself to help with creating the backstory. So, for instance, how and why did my character come into existence? Where's my character from and what were their living conditions? Where's my character's current location and why? How does my character interact with others? Are there other beings like my character? What is the age of my character? What does my character enjoy and fear? What is my character's personal wish? Again, these are just questions that you can ask yourself to help develop the backstory of your character. So stuff like, what's your character's personal wish? Their personal wish might be to save the planet, or, you know, to find better resources because where they came from don't have any resources. You know, are there other beings like your character? Because if your character comes from a nation where there's loads of him or them or her, then it's going to be a different compared to if they're the only being like that in the universe, where they created in another planet, where they create Earth. All of these things can help you to develop the backstory of your character. Once you get the backstory of your character, you can move on to the next phase, which is developing the psychology. So the psychology is, again, one of the most important parts of your character, because the psychology would then would very likely determine the physiology of your character, their locomotion and how they are and what they want and their purpose, their behavior towards others and the world around them. So I'm going to just read this. What we think, what we do, our behaviors and attitudes are all based on our psychology. Knowing how your character thinks, what they often think about, and how it perceives itself and the world it lives in will not only help develop their personality, but can also aid with structuring their anatomy. Another idea is to think about whether you want your character to have free will or to be programmed. So when I say free will to be programmed, it's like us as human beings. As we know, a lot of animals are more programmed species. They're reptilian and their emotional limbic system. They're more programmed creatures. Whereas us as human beings, we also have a conscious side, the frontal cortex. So therefore, we can think about doing something and not do it. Whereas most animals, if they have the feeling to do it, they just do it. So questions you can ask yourself: what are my character's desires? What is my character's desire? What is my character's purpose? What are my character's intentions? Can my character think freely, or is it programmed? If programmed, who was it programmed by and what were their intentions? If my character can think freely, what kind of thoughts does it often have? What is its perception about itself, and what is its perception about the world? Two very important things is: what is your character's perception about itself, and what is the character's perception about the world? So you think about that for yourself as a human being. How you think about yourself is how you're going to behave. If you see yourself as someone that is very loving, very compassionate, confident, how you behave is going to be shaped that way. How you see the world, if you think the world is a beautiful place, you're going to have a different personality and behavior compared to somebody who doesn't love themselves, hates themselves, and hates the world that they live in. So knowing your character's perception of itself as well as purpose, because nothing in the world exists without having a purpose. So therefore, knowing your character's purpose will also help to develop psychology. And again, all of these things can come and should come from the backstory. Moving on from the backstory, we're going to move on to developing the anatomy and physiology. And what we're going to focus on is breath, idle, locomotions, and sound. So breath, the sound and timing of how long it takes your character to inhale and exhale is a very important factor. How a creature breathes can give a great reference of what kind of anatomy and physiology they have, as well as reveal traits of their personality. For example, big breaths. If somebody takes a big breath, and now I'm going to give you a prime example. If you was to close your eyes and you heard somebody breathing like, see, now breaths that take at least 2 to 3 seconds to inhale and exhale, this could then determine that the character that is in present is a character that's got a large body mass. Their anatomy and physiology is really one that's really out there, and they're a character of strength and confidence. Whereas if you had more of a gasping sound like so when you hear those type of sounds, if you had closed your eyes and listened to the two different sounds, you may have thought that this creature was more vicious, more smaller in body mass compared to the last breath. So breathing, the breath cycles that they take can help for you to determine how this character is going to move and what is their physiology and anatomy like. Now, you can create the physiology and anatomy beforehand, but you have to then think about the breath that they're going to be taking. Do you understand what I'm saying? So here's a couple of questions. What is the perception I want to create around my character's breathing cycle? So when they are breathing, what would you want people to think when they hear that breath? Do you understand? How does my character breathe, and how does it relate to their anatomy and physiology? Does my character's breathing change in sound and speed due to its mood changing, or an engagement that requires a lot of physical energy? So again, these things are just questions to help you move on with the physiology and the anatomy and the locomotion. So now we're going to move on to idle. Now, an idol is something that I discovered from working in video games as an actor, that, the idol is the position of your character in its neutral based form. So when it's there in its neutral self, just chilling and not doing anything. So we're going to move in deeper in about idols and how to create it. Your character's idol should be a combination of their psychology, anatomy, and physiology. For example, if your character is particularly physically strong, confident, and authoritative like Thanos from the Marvel Universe, which you can see in this picture, I hope you guys know who Thanos is because he's one of the best characters ever made. His persona can be seen from how his posture has been designed. In his stance, Thanos' neck and head are upright, and his chest frame and arms are open. This communicates fearlessness, leadership, and strength. Iron Man, and I hope you know who Iron Man is. Iron Man is also a character known to be confident, authoritative, and strong. So as you can see from these images, they have a similar structure when they're standing in this base form, when they're just standing upright. And the reason why is because their psychology. So even though they are different in physicality, different in mass compared to each other's bodies, because of their persona of themselves and how they see themselves and how they are, they got the psychology of someone that's leadership, someone who is brave, someone who is ready to go out there, someone who has strength, knowing their own worth. You can see that they have a very similar idol. A couple of questions for your idol. What is my character's psychology when it's in a neutral state, and how can this be reflected in their anatomy? What is my character's overall persona, and how can I reflect this in its idol? How do I want my character to be perceived while in a neutral state? Again, just questions to ask yourself. Now we're going to move on to locomotion and sound. Our locomotion and vocalization originates from our psychology, personality, anatomy, and physiology. Therefore, when it comes to the development of your character's locomotion, how they walk, run, and attack, each of these aspects should be taken into consideration. Using the idol you created for your character gives you a good starting point for developing its locomotion, and the neutral breathing cycle you created also is a good starting point for developing the sounds and characters of the vocalization. When you move on to the character's locomotion, how they walk, how they move, how they attack, how they defend, using the base form idol will help you to give you a starting point. So if your character is very confident, then they should walk confident. If your character is very curious or fearful, then they should walk more curious and fearful. So this is what it means to understand your character's psychology, because it makes the character's idol, how they stand, and then it will help them to how they move. The same with sound. The way your character breathe may determine how the character sounds. So if your character's breath are big and deep and strong, their voice may also be big and deep and strong, and vice versa. Again, these are just generic things that I'm using for you to help. You don't have to follow the rule. These are not no rule books, but these are things that I feel help me when I'm developing and becoming a character. So here comes the questions. What is the psychology intention behind each movement and sound? How do I want my character's locomotion and vocalization to be perceived? What is the weight of my character, and what impact does it have on my character's movement? How does my character's weight impact the ground and environment around it? Are there individual sounds associated with specific movements? Moving on, referencing. Referencing is a great tool for developing new ideas, especially referencing work created by other individuals within your sector. It can also help with developing a plan of steps needed in order to create your character. So if you look at this image here by Marcus Winnie, I hope I'm saying this artist's name right. You can see the references that he used, I'm assuming it's a he, used to create this character in the middle. You can see on the far side on the right, there's a cat. And on the left side, we have lizards and reptiles, one that's still in our time span and ones that were dinosaurs. So he referenced all of these creatures in order to make his own creatures. And that's what referencing is really about. It's about taking what's in your environment, taking what's been done before, and using it to create your own. Now, the best part, applying your creativity. Ultimately, being creative with your own ideas is the best way to feel connected to your character. So if you want your character to sound completely different from what they may be expecting, judging by its appearance, you have every right to do so with your creation. And this is probably the number one fact. If you are creating something new that's never been made before, you have the ultimate right to do it how you want to do it, regardless of anybody's opinions. And this is what you need to keep in mind, because a lot of people like to put their 2 cents on it when you're creating something that is of your own. You don't need nobody else's 2 cents unless you ask them for the advice. If you're copying an animal that already exists on planet Earth, then yes, there are rules and guidelines that you should really follow. But if you're creating your own, please use your own creativity, regardless of what I've said about, if the character's big, then it should have big breaths. And there's many different characters out there that do not follow these guidelines. So choose your own or what works for you. Next, another big thing, becoming your character. Now, I don't have to really read this. I can just break this down to you really simple. If you are creating a character, you should jump up out of your seat and go and role play as your character, because role playing will give you the best information about the moves, about the physiology, about the everything about your character, in order to say if it will work for you, if it feels right. You can actually feel if something feels right for your character, if something looks right for your character, by role playing, by being, by becoming. So I advise everybody that's an animator or a creature artist or whatever you do in relation to developing a character, you should role play. And it doesn't take no big acting skills to do so. It's your character. So how you want your character to be, what you've decided, you should get up out your seat and go and role play. Next, I just put down like 2 type of techniques that I use to become a character, which is method acting, which is, immersing yourself mentally, emotionally into existing as a character, and living a moment, which is a spiritual concept of being and existing only in each moment, letting go of all thoughts and just being. So for me, this is how I become a creature, because if I'm playing something that's not human, I have to become it, because if I do it as a human pretending to be, then I'm not really immersing myself into it, and I'm not allowing myself to be as one and become. So this is the reason why I decide to take on what they might call method acting, or a spiritual concept of being in the moment. And last but not least, enhance your role play. Depending on the type of character you've created, using equipment or props to get the best out of your character's locomotion during roleplay can enhance how you embody your character and create better feedback for your self-assessment. So if you got a quadruped character that you've created, go and get some arm extensions. You can come and get some from me, I sell them. But no, seriously, go and get some arm extensions. If you got a character that's got claws, buy some toy claws and start moving around as your character. If you got a character that's got big feet, go get some big pair trainers and move around as your character. If your character's got weight, put on loads of clothes and move. Become your character and use props to do so. All right, this is the best way to get the best feedback about what you've created. All right, so just to recap on everything that we said, the main rules is 1, create the story, because without a story, then who is this being? 2, once you create the story, create the psychology. After you create the psychology, work on the anatomy and physiology. Of course, you can design the anatomy and physiology first, and then you go back to what's the backstory of this character, and then creating the psychology. You can design the physicality first and then go to developing the backstory and psychology, or you can do it the other way around. Of course, use referencing to help you get the work that you need to do. Most importantly, apply your creativity, because that is the ultimate key. And last but not least, become your creature / become your character. Guys, I hope this was helpful. Please like and subscribe. Well, you would have done it if you really wanted to by now. So if you don't want to, don't do it. But anyway, guys, peace out. Love.